Check. A 1 2, a 1 2. What's up, everyone? It's Schmitty, and we got another episode of Talkin Schmit. Today on the program, Justin Girard. And since I've been off radar for a minute, I made this one extra lengthy for y'all. You're going to want to save this for road trip or long flight. Listen in segments, however you want to do it, or just binge the shit out of it, because we got over 2 hours of Justin and I flapping about the past. I also want to give a big shout out to Mr. Clyde Singleton, who not only started a new podcast periodically called Push and P, but he decided to include yours truly as his first guest. So that was a huge honor. Go look for Push and P under WCRP and skateboarding. You already know that everything Clyde does is going to have flavor. Man, being sick sucks, and I felt like shit, but I did get to hang with Neckface as he did a whole wall mural next to the Thrasher store last week. Had visits from the Gut, Arco, and even Wheatberry, who came by and said he didn't recognize me without my chain wallet.
Bipolar as fuck, that guy.
Come on, Wheat. I don't think I've ever worn a chain wallet. If somebody's got a photo of me with a chain wallet, I will buy Wheatberry a steak dinner.
Talkin Schmit, dude.
Anyways, the reason everyone was in town was the annual Peastone Invitational at Bob's. We built some new obstacles over there. And then I decided to get fucking COVID or whatever I ended up having. And sadly, I had to miss it this year.
I was there.
Heartbreak Hotel. The contest edit will be coming from Mr. Matt Bublitz on the Thrasher site soon. So just like y'all, I'm eager to see it. I heard the top 3 and I'm stoked on that. You know the winner had to win. Come on, Tom. Shout out to the Bones Brigade audio show for giving us a shout out.
Shout out.
Glad to know that you guys are listening, and I got to listen more to what you guys are doing over there because it's kind of new to my radar. So thanks to Dan Nazaretta for pointing it out. Ding. Hey, who out there plays Wordle?
I don't even answer questions like that.
I've been doing it daily, kind of enjoying it. I just confirmed guest number 200. You're going to have to wait and see. That's right, fuckers. Summer's here, the days are longer, and Casey Schmidt is a San Francisco Giant. I got the jersey already. Talkin Schmit.
Talkin Schmit, dude.
Newsflash. Our girl is in the dressing room. She'll be right out, and we'll do the raffle after these messages. John Joseph Van Landingham of Southern Georgia, who has been skating since 1986 and blowing glass since 96. His glass is homemade in the USA, and you can find out more info from him on his Instagram or his Facebook. Someday he may even have one of them OG websites to peep. Anyway, I'm super hyped. He reached out to me and stoked to get someone who's down for the cause. So with that, John Joseph Van Landingham, keep it going. And like Albino says, Blood Wizard. Blood Wizard. Blood Wizard. Blood Wizard. Shop.bloodwizard.com.
Tickety-tack.
Hey, it's Corey at Blue Plate, 3218 Mission Street. Come see us. Meatloaf, fried chicken, deviled eggs, Dollar Olympia beers. We're here every day of the week. We got a garden and we got smiles on our faces. Come let us make you happy.
But okay, it's finally time for what Jeremy Nuttall, Sean Fulber, Danny Craig, Dan Nazaretta, Judson Cheney, Mathis Bean, Chris Albiston, Alexander Winslow, Jason Dowdney, Dalton Jones, Devin Curran, Adam Baker, and Adam Rizzolo have been waiting for. Thank you, guys. This is fucking fun for me. Sharal, my lovely wife and assistant, is here to show us the first prize and the grand prize. The friend of the show, the vertical vampire. Flip that over the other way so they can see the bottom. That's Darren Navarrete. Complete skateboard with Indy trucks, slime ball wheels, Bronson bearings, mob grip. the total complete skateboard from Creech. Are you guys ready? It's time for the grand prize winner, the Darren Navarrete complete skateboard from the Creech. Sharal, please get all the names in the hat, get them ready, and I will draw out the winner. That's right, kids. Black and orange SF Giants hat. Pro Fit. Ooh. There you go. Okay. Judson Cheney, you have won! We'll be sending you the complete skateboard, Judson. Congratulations, man. I don't know if that's going on your wall or under your feet, but as my friend Albino says,
We just need to be free and love each other.
we got 2 more prizes, though. Don't go away sad. Just go away. Anyway, the second prize is the Beer Helmet DVD.
Are you out of your mind?
Legendary video. Everybody needs to watch it, right? We're giving that away right now for number 2, the second prize. Shake those names up. Shake them like they're hot. Don't pull them out, though, people. You. All right, all right. Isn't Sharal pretty? I'm such a lucky guy. God damn it. Dun, 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 dun. Alexander Winslow, you have won the DVD Beer Helmet. It'll be in the mail tomorrow. Thank you. Honeybee has joined the crew. One final giveaway. This is for the Schmitty filmer wheel from OJ Wheels. This is a collector's item. They don't make these anymore. This brand new 55 millimeter filmer cruiser wheel. The good homie Cranny, he fucking gave Schmitty a wheel. He actually gave me like 3 or 4 different wheels.
Is that real?
Anyway, bros are the days. And next up is up, high, up. There you up, the Gussie B. All right. Dun, dun. Look at Honey. Okay, guys. Pick a winner so I can get back to sleep. And the winner is... Ooh. You might nut all, but your name is Jeremy Nuttall. Congratulations to everyone that played. Thank you. And hopefully we'll do this again. If there's any companies out there that want to do giveaways, Talkin Schmit is your podcast.
Talkin Schmit, dude.
One question for Sharal before she leaves. When this comes out, it'll be past. But today, as we record, it is Monday. 3-0 Denver. Do the Lakers get swept or do they win one at home and go back to Denver to lose?
Swept.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I don't think so. Winner, winner, sheen dinner.
You heard it here first.
But y'all gonna get this podcast.
Okay, you've waited long enough. Let me pass it on to the one who calls himself Average Young Man on the Instagram. Enjoy the show, guys.
Hey, everybody. This is Justin Girard, formerly now Justin Girardi, and you're listening to Talkin Schmit.
Hey. Talkin Schmit. I'm already not watching.
It's cool. Like, tonight is the night.
Damn, this is like the coolest thing I'm ever gonna do.
I wouldn't say it was fun.
What do you mean? Well, Christian Fletcher's younger brother.
Fuck the Dodgers.
Big Dog's in. What do you think, Dolan? We on? Schmitty?
Talkin Schmit.
Alpha macaroni.
Most of these guys, their opinion don't matter.
Talkin Schmit, right?
It's skateboarding.
I remember that.
Talkin Schmit. What are yuns doing?
Holy shit.
Skateboarding homies.
No, Schmitty, you can't jump in.
What is happening?
Gregory.
Yes, we are. Wi-Fi check 1, Wi-Fi check 2.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another podcast We're going to talk skateboarding again today. Can you believe it, kids? We got an ex-pro from the Monterey Hills. Today, we got Justin Girard on the program. How are you?
Hey, everyone. Not doing too bad. How are you?
I'm good. It's funny. We were talking earlier and I was like, I wonder when the last time I saw him was. And the last time I saw you, but maybe I didn't see you, was at the Giants World Series where there was probably a lot of alcohol being consumed and a lot of high fives and stuff. But how you been? That was 2000.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's easy. It's easy. Exactly. Yeah. It's easy to disappear in a group of drunken, excited Giants fans. You kind of just blend in. Everyone's wearing the same stuff anyway, right?
You blend in unless you're Staba.
Cool. I guess I'm just it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he had me in a headlock at one point because I was too rowdy. That was a really loud, good crew of people. But I'm doing pretty well. I'm back in California, back in my home county where I grew up. So moved back last year and things have been good thus far, not too far. I'm right up the dirt road from Zerosh. So
so you're in how you pronounce it? Kachagua?
Kashawa.
What the fuck is that?
Gonna take a shower.
Konnichiwa.
Have you gotten on a dirt board?
In the period of time that I've been back, we built a mini ramp. I had a new baby. My 5-year-old's enrolled in school and he consumes a lot of my time. So I haven't had any time for that. I'm kind of gearing him up to get down.
We're gearing up for what they call getting down.
We've got a pole barn down there, got a mini ramp in there. In fact, Israel and some of the Meeks geeks were here the other day, came down here for the weekend and had a session along with some of Brooke's friends. I'm sure you probably met Brooke before, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we're working on building a sustainable skate scene in the sticks out here with Zerosh's bowl and my mini ramp, and then probably some other stuff in the future. We'll see. There's also a parking block down there because there's a bank that goes up to the concrete pad for the pole barn. I have not gotten on the dirt board, and now we're getting Pacific Northwest rainy weather on a consistent basis, which I don't know. I guess that could be good or bad. I don't know. Yeah. What about you? Have you gotten on the dirt board?
I've gotten on it a few times, but the last time I got on it, it was King of the Road, where he had like the midway point there. And I went there early because I was filming, so we had to set up and stuff. And I took a run without kind of looking, and there was this hose going across the thing, and you're cooking on those things. And I hit the hose and just flew. And literally my back went out so bad that I almost couldn't film that day. I was like, oh no. Like I had to
I feel like part of dirt boarding culture is the
eating shit.
Intentional slam.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I normally don't intentionally slam. So at 52, it's iffy. I'll get on it this summer. I'm sure he's going to have some kind of event and it's like literally right down the dirt road for me. In fact, who knows, could just skate down on the dirt road. He has actually ridden from my house down to his house.
Did you grow up in Kashawa or were you more Salinas?
Basically all over Monterey County, on the North Coast and Seaside Marina. And then my mom just kept moving towards Salinas. There's a highway called 68, Monterey Salinas Highway between the two towns. And we lived on that, which there's kind of some ex-urban locations there that when I was a kid were almost rural. They were, because there just wasn't a lot of development that period in time. So we lived there. And then at 8 and a half, she moved to Salinas. And technically everyone thinks of the 68 as Salinas unless you're in Seaside, Salinas is where my formative skateboarding years really began. I started at 7 years old in Monterey, but I didn't start taking it seriously, until about 12.
Yeah.
That's when I dedicated all my time to it. So Salinas is kind of my hometown. But I feel comfortable out. So my dad used to have a cabin out here when I was a kid.
Oh, and, sick.
We also used to come out here a lot to skate shotgun. Not sure that's a really rough, gnarly, just angular ditch.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's it's hamburger hands territory if you take a like Superman in that place. But it is fun.
What do you think it was that like clicked for you, that it was like you said you went from just skating kind of like whatever to like, oh, I'm going to put a lot into this?
Obviously I'll tell a story after this that's kind of funny, but or that's interesting, but I would say I just had a genuine passion for it, underlying a kind of, ease of kind of, integrating onto it. I felt comfortable on a skateboard pretty much from the first time I ever got on one. That was in this place. And I don't know if you ever heard of Matt Billack before, but he actually informed me of what this place was. He's an old time skater here, great skater, but I'm pretty sure I dropped in for the first time. I don't know if it was his ramp. I can't remember whose ramp it was. It was like a, 8.5 foot, 9 foot vert ramp, scared to death, of course. And then being essentially peer pressured and bullied into doing it by him and some other guys. There's a park called Dennis Menace Park, which I'm pretty sure you've probably seen. Yeah. So the comic strip artist is from this area. And so that's how that park, became a thing. But in addition to that, there is a parking lot adjacent to Baseball Diamond, and on a seasonal basis in the 70s, these people, I don't know who they were, but they used to come in and bring a plexiglass half pipe, no flat bottom, and quarter pipes that they would affix to the parking lot surface. And I lived in an apartment complex near there. And so I'd steal change, cost like $1.50 to get in or something. And so my mom got me it's funny, I was talking to somebody else about this recently, and they said they also too had a Jaguar banana board. So my mom bought me a banana board, red, 2 strips of black grip, Jaguar logo on the top and Jaguar logo on the bottom. And I used to steal change and go over there and skate and get Grom vibed from all the guys in the short shorts. Other than what clicked for me is that's probably the period of time that Thrasher and Santa Cruz and some other local kind of, essentially local entities, local brands but I was becoming aware of those. I was starting to look at magazines, videos. I mean, those would have been, I'm not even sure Skate Rock, because this was 81.
Oh, that early.
Yeah, 82. Okay. So 82. I turned, I'm November birthday, so it's late in the year.
You a Scorpio?
I am a Sagittarius, but I'm right on the cusp. So I have elements of both of those things. Yeah. And so also, you know what? Around that time, the skate scene in Salinas was forming a little more concretely. And so there were other people to skate with. And also, I just kind of started running with those kids. So and then, the way that worked out was one of my friends that wasn't taking it seriously gave me a Veriflex Vectra. He wasn't really using it. And I said, well, can I borrow it? And that was a proper skateboard. And in Salinas, the curb cuts are transitioned, ride around on those and do tricks on them and out on top of the sidewalk and that kind of thing.
And is there a dedicated skate shop at that time, or is it a bike store that sells boards, or what was the vibes?
I'm not, so I don't know if it was around at the time. I think he might have opened a little later than that, but Bill's Wheels, which was essentially my first sponsor,
shout out,
was right around the corner from my house. Yeah, so that was a piece of it too, because the scene obviously developed in part around Bill's being in Salinas. Bill being there, I mean, literally, like I said, first sponsor, he would organize demos at local schools, elementary schools, junior high schools, that kind of thing. And there's actually a whole bunch of video of that on YouTube. So you can go back and then there'd be a contest with it in conjunction sometimes, but you can go back and look at those and you'll see all kinds of people,
Like what kind of music? Were you into music that early or not yet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it went straight from kind of, I guess more obscure new wave right into punk rock, of course. At that time, it would have been metal, new wave. And by that, I mean, not like what people think of as new wave now, but I don't know, stuff that is a little more ska, or like kind of punk oriented at the time. And there were a ton of shows here. That's a separate subject, but there were a ton of shows in this area at the time that we all used to frequent. it didn't take long for, suicidal tendencies and that kind of stuff to be on the menu, starting with stuff like the Rolling Stones, getting into Iron Maiden, getting into Slayer, getting into, even stuff like Voivod and all that, all that kind of stuff. And then transitioning into, all the skate bands, all the skate rock bands, including, Big Boys and Drunk Engines. And that's part of that story, is that I don't know if now's the best time to tell it, but it is a Thrasher-oriented story, because we went to I'm pretty sure it was the first skate rock show at the farm.
I was there.
Me, my friend Greg Perkins, my friend Josh Bear, and some other people from Salinas, just got a ride somehow, and got to the skate rock show during it, like interlude between bands. I didn't know it at the time, but we must have looked like, premier sort of market interviewees, because Kevin Thatcher came up to us and started asking us a bunch of questions about kind of, our interfaces to skateboarding and what we liked, kind of polling us,
Right.
And I'll remember it forever, because it was, this, I don't know, it was interesting to have somebody just come up and start asking you questions. And then, of course, we just got into conversation about it. But this is I don't know when the first skate rock show was, but I wasn't any older than 16. I was probably 15. That would have been 1985. I remember it as being the first one, but maybe it was the second. Drunk Engines was there.
Was Tales of Terror?
Playing.
Who are the bands that played?
The one that jumps out to me is Drunk Engines.
Okay. How crazy is it that, like, for us, my high school years were at the farm almost every weekend. And now there's the best skate park in the city is at the farm.
In that location.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes municipalities, even if they're not planning, they get their nostalgia right. There's actually there's a fair amount of that. So I can't remember what the anecdote was, but somebody brought up the same kind of thing.
Besides the shop, like, what was your first true sponsor? Like, was it Brand X?
Yeah. Well, so I actually went to the very first skate camp. When you're in a single parent household, your mom wants to get you the hell out of the house as quickly and as often as possible. And so she sent me to the very first Visalia skate camp, which at that time, it was just in a parking lot at a YMCA in Visalia. It was either 84 or 85. I can't remember exactly. And Thebo was there, and Ron Allen was there, and
Hello, it's George.
A bunch of other people. But that was another one of my kind of, entrees into knowing who was who, right, and looking at magazines and understanding who these people were. The message I got from Ron and Thebo was,
Jimmy Thebo! Go do it! Get rad! Go do it! Make everybody mad! I said now! Go do it! Get shit! Go do it! Make everybody sad! I gotta go! Gotta go! Gotta go! Go! Gotta go!
You're good, but you're not quite good enough yet for us to sponsor you. Sean Goff was also there, and it's funny because I reached out to him a while ago to ask him if he remembered this, and he didn't remember. And maybe he communicated with them or something. I'm not exactly sure how that went down, but he ended up essentially getting in touch with the people at Brand X to get me on their flow team. And that parlayed into a trip down there, me meeting Bob Schmeltzer, because Bob was a pro for Brand X at the time.
Right.
Me meeting Sean Sullivan, who's a photographer, that he has that book Barge at Will, and he has some really early photos of me pre-Circle A in that book that are some of my favorites because they're like really unspoiled, right? It's like right in between. I'm starting to get stuff for free, but it's still kind of pure of heart,
for sure,
interface to everything. But I was still obviously, who knows what happened, because they kind of went out of business there right after a while. Madrid, kind of that whole conglomerate of skate brands went out of business. I started getting flowed from Carlos Salinas, who was in between SF and Salinas for Fogtown.
Shout out.
I started getting, Bored to Deaths and, Van Goghs.
The
from
Beast.
him. Yeah, he moved back to Salinas. I think there was a little period there in the mid 80s where things were a little bit iffy. I can't remember how I ended up meeting him, but that was effectively my second sponsor. And this kind of, launched me into the Castle experience. Yeah, CASL, California Amateur Skateboard League. And then from there, I met Windsor and all of the Spikes and Troy Clower and Ray Barbie and Robert Torres and all the guys in NorCal who were going to the competitions. You could kind of pool resources and get to the contests, even as far as Arizona and stuff like that. Because somebody be driving, and so you hop in the car and go. Stay where you got to stay and petition, for a couch to sleep on or whatever.
Simpler times, right? You didn't have any worries. You didn't hesitate. You just jumped in and went. Like you weren't thinking about anything except for, really. I want to go skate with my bros. Yeah.
And that you want to be around because it was street skating was really evolving at the time. And,
right.
Cementing itself as its own genre of skateboarding. And you really wanted to be around those people because the innovation was happening in those circles. And, you were feeding off of that energy, not just that specifically that group of people, obviously SF, of course, a lot was happening there too. For that early period though, I was more in the kind of SJ, Sacto, Monterey County scope because that's just the crew of people that I ran with. And that's how, I ended up on Circle A.
San Jose, San Francisco, and Sacramento are 3 different regions, but they're all pretty close together. But if you were from one of those regions, especially as a skateboarder, it was very identifiable. Like, like JJ Rogers and that crew with the chain wallets and everything.
At all.
And then San Francisco was a little more like they were kind of into like the St. Ides shirts and like Louis Vuitton. Tommy was the style king.
I mean, it makes sense because it's kind of something of a Gotham, style experience. And then also if you're growing up in that kind of proper urban environment, your exposure to just more kind of fashionable people, more of an urban experience, more of kind of high-end goods in general, right? I don't think Tommy grew up in that kind of environment, but you're around it, right? And so, Sacto and SJ was kind of more your suburban skate experience. Sacto was definitely your Gravediggers, river tire swing, weekends hot rod experience. I mean, that was fantastic for me because it was Sacto in particular with Windsor and Doggin and Troy. And Doggin? Casey? Okay.
I know Doggin and Windsor.
Okay, so there was one night where a party spills out of a house or something, and then the next thing you know, people are grabbing onto a tailgate and just being dragged across the ground on their butt to see, and then people are measuring how far they got and how, this kind of stuff, just total kind of mischievous lawlessness. Windsor was there, of course.
Yeah.
JJ was there. All of those other guys were there. Curtis, Franklin, all these guys, being less of kind of that kind of risk taker, kind of expanded my view of how to get rowdy and how to be a part of that kind of scene.
Yeah. Did you ever take down an ashtray?
No. I mean, I'll leave that to the Franklins and the I don't know.
Was it Snaggle or who was that?
Oh, maybe it was Snaggle. Yeah, I think it might have been Snaggle. I feel like, there's another memory that comes to mind of being across the street from the Salinas. I don't know why we were in Salinas, but in the Salinas Armory, which is a skate spot. There's a little homestyle Mexican place across the street from there called Rosita's. And somebody dared Cardiel to eat these. They weren't ghost peppers, but they were, I don't think they were jalapenos. They were something slightly more spicy. And he ate like 5 or 6 of them or something on a dare and had to leave the restaurant, or had to hit the the baño rather quickly. And that's another one. I mean, that's another one of those people, you know, that there's the capacity, of course, for everyone to kind of take skating seriously, but there was, you know, equal parts kind of, you know, reckless entertainment and gusto behind trying to do your best skating. And obviously Cardiel's an example of that. Yeah, great experiences. And then the opposite of that would have been my time spent with Ray Barbie and Robert Torres.
Right.
Bouncing around, going to contests. Those guys were a little more serious is the wrong word, but tame. That started in part with connections with Windsor. Their sponsorship with GNS. I never actually rode for GNS, but both those guys rode for GNS, which was, you know, a brand people would have wanted to be riding for at that time, especially with the Miller shape and that shape kind of inspiring even probably Windsor's stuff, right?
Yeah, Neil Blender.
Funny nose. Yeah, all that stuff. Blender, of course. Which is another story. Yeah, but I got a really good interface from, you know, I kind of had a cross California experience because most of my sponsors outside of Fogtown were always in SoCal. I got to be a part of that Sacto crew, but I also got to be a part of the Barnes, Lucero, Justin Reagan, Schmelzer, all of that crew as well, and have a formative part of my experience kind of developed there in HB, Costa Mesa. So many experiences. Jinx's ramp, Blender's ramp. I got to skate that little mini, with Schmelzer. And I think it was just me, Schmelzer, and him.
I love Neil Blender, man.
That was my jam too, because I grew up on those little curb cuts.
Yeah.
Derby, you know, which was pumping and speed and launching and, you know, inverts and all that kind of thing, along with the street skating. And so I always, you know, tight transitions for me were, you know, something I felt really comfortable with because shorter, compact, you know, tuck your knees into your chest kind of stuff was stuff that I had a lot of fun with. And his ramp was like that.
It was tight tranny, huh?
Yeah, which was totally different than anything else, right? Like everything else was normal transitions. His was, you know, I don't know, 3-4 feet tall, super tight transitions, super, super tight, you know, extension.
Yeah.
And then, you know, all the extended rock and rolls you can do, I guess, right?
Did you guys hit Sadlands?
I did. Yeah, I did get to skate there. Not super often, right? Because I was like a little further down. I didn't really have the San Diego connections at that time. But it was more, you know, NorCal, Orange County, you know?
Okay.
So NorCal OC and more of, I guess, San Diego's slightly less punk rock kind of culture. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. My interfaces came organically that way. And you didn't, I mean, San Diego had a huge skate scene, but it just didn't make it down there quite as much. It was, and also I think it's slightly more vert oriented for the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like Del Mar was there and like a lot of the big parks and stuff. I remember being a kid going to Upland and Del Mar for the first time and just like, we didn't have anything like that anywhere up here. And I was like, whoa.
Well, Ray Stevens was here the other day with those Meeks Geeks guys. And we were talking about, we did have it, but it was slightly before our time.
Right,
I don't know how old you, so I could have maybe gotten to some of the places in NorCal, like Winchester and Soquel.
Yeah.
But I didn't because I wasn't quite, you know, taking it seriously enough at the time.
Sure.
But I did. We were talking about how, you know, even after they took SoCal out, there was a chunk of it that was still skatable.
Yeah.
And you could go hop the fence. However, so that's the difference between my, you know, experience with street. And this is actually very kind of specific to that period in time, right? Where street skating was forming itself as its own genre. It was more utilitarian because you didn't have the skate parks around anymore. Maybe there was a backyard vert ramp, maybe there was a backyard mini ramp, but there was the street, there was derby, right? And then there were spots you could kind of hop into, like Soquel, and, you know, on the weekends when the people weren't there running the business and skate. That was just an absolutely awesome kind of really classic 70s skate, you know, types of transitions in that chunk that was still exposed at the time. And then of course Buena Vista, which was probably the first pool I ever skated, and then the first full page photo I ever had in a magazine, which was a lean to tail into the shallow. Yeah, into the shallow and trans world. And
Okay.
I think I had a couple in Thrasher that were like quarter page, half page before that, and then some ads and stuff. But that was my first full page that Tobin shot.
Sick. Okay.
Yeah.
You came onto my radar probably around this era, which is the Dogtown era.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you get on Dogtown, and what was going on with that?
Circle A was, I love being part of that company. I would have loved to have had my first pro model on Circle A. And I don't really know exactly what went down with it kind of falling off the radar and Bob starting Poorhouse, but I know that Bob, well, at one point, my mom was concerned about my potential, my real potential, because I was putting so much time into this, right? And so she had a conversation with Bob, and Bob was there to reassure her that my skill level was high enough for me to make something of myself as a professional skateboarder. And another part of the conversation, though, was that skateboarding was like rock and roll. And that you kind of like, if you're actually going to have any concerns, then you need to kind of plan for the nature of that it might be fleeting. Right. And so I think maybe Circle A's, I wouldn't say demise, and obviously he's got the shop now. And I hope he continues to bring back the brand, because it's such a class. I mean, think about this, Templeton, Jake Burns, Max, like so many people, including, really classic big names. I mean, I skated Flower Street with Dwayne Peters, like right after I got on,
Yeah.
And so there were really, important people in the background of that. But anyway, that went out of business. Bob started Poorhouse. And in fact, I think it was at the 88 AM final in Arizona that Bob just kind of came up to me and said, "Oh, here, you ride for Poorhouse now." And so if you, yeah. And so if you, if you look, there's a photo of me that Dave Swift took where I'm doing a nose bone off of I call him the rocket launcher, right? It's the quarter pipe that's in the middle of the big bank. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Those need to make a comeback, in my opinion, but those are fun. But
it's like a setback.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like there's a quarter pipe in the middle and then a bank around it. So I'm doing a nose bone on one of those, and I have a Poorhouse t-shirt on and Thunder stickers and a Poorhouse stick and that kind of thing. But that's when I got approached by a few different brands, but I had already met Shroogie and kind of that crew. And so I was on Spitfire before they even launched the wheel, partially because of that interface I got with Thebo. That led to sponsorship by Thunder and Spitfire, like I said before. I had a quarter page ad, I think. I talked to the Chut dudes and Sargent, because Concrete Jungle was still around, which is probably my all-time favorite skateboard company. It was in my view, it was the first street skater company.
Yeah.
It was really the first one. Maybe I'm not sure when Chut came around, but those were the first two. So Bob says you ride for Poorhouse now, and then Shroogie kind of said, well, you should consider Dogtown. And my criteria at the time, and he was convincing, of course, right? And it was coming up north, right? Because Fausto was getting involved with it, and High Speed was getting involved with it. Yeah. So it was going to be in my neck of the woods. And in addition to that, riding for brands like Fogtown and Circle A, I just kind of inherently have a respect for tradition, and that obviously always bled into my skateboarding. Obviously, Dogtown had a fantastic team of well-respected, really, really nice people who are all like, how Christian is just like an affable, really nice guy all the time.
Yeah.
All those guys are the same way. And, so all my sponsors would be under the same roof. They'd be in NorCal, and it made a lot of sense to me. But the primary motivator for me, honestly, is just the history of that brand. And having skated the walls, you know what I mean, with Jackson and Dressen and
Murray,
Fingers and
Foster.
Oster and all of those guys who are all fantastic dudes, you know, and seeing Jay Adams around the whole nine, you know, spending time down there, rolling through there with Julian and, you know, other guys that had an interface to that area because they lived there. I just, you know, that feeling led me to want to be on Dogtown. And I'm lucky enough, like me and Karma, I think in that period, we were the last ones to get a Dogtown cross, right? In that, because so my first pro model was Dogtown cross with the skeleton mobster, and then there's two hands at the bottom going like this, lightning bolts. It's extremely rare. I'm sure I only have one. Lucky to have one of those right before they they were kind of making a move more into modernizing their aesthetic, which obviously, you know, Dogtown's always going to be Dogtown, and they're back to where they were, which is where they always should have been.
Yeah.
But everybody understands why this stuff happens. But my next one which was cool too, which was the kid jumping, he's in the air and he's throwing a firework at a cop car.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's a cartoon graphic, so that was the second one.
Okay.
But that, and then at the time, obviously, they were making an effort to bring a lot of other, burgeoning heavy hitters onto the team. Wade, JJ, everybody, like basically,
Cardiel, right?
Yeah, I mean, even KO, KO, who was a Mad Circle guy, he rode for Dogtown.
I didn't know
and
that.
they sponsored a lot of EMB skaters. And they were taking a little bit of an H Street style approach to that, to kind of get the brand visible to people who are kind of probably outside of the cultural scope for it at the time.
Right.
And I think that they had some success with it for a while. But that, like I said, I wanted to ride for Dogtown because of the history of the band, because of the people that were involved in it, and because I had a great respect for it. And it had been a part, right, along with Suicidal.
Yeah.
And my personal experiences, it had been a part of my, entree into skate culture.
Yeah, I mean, that was huge. What happened with the first board? You said, why was it so rare?
Oh, because they were making the graphic treatment transition from the cross to stuff more along the lines of like that graphic I just explained or detailed, and then Wade's graphic, right, and JJ's, which had like the temple figure on it. So they were doing some more kind of cartoon illustration oriented stuff like mine. And I kind of took on, there was definitely we need a replacement for Eric Dressen kind of thing. And I was a similar type of skater, like high speed. And people used to make comparisons to me and him a lot back then, before street skating really asserted itself and you could still be ATV, but you kind of had to trend a little more toward dedicated street skating, like there were younger kids starting to skate. So you need to kind of be attractive to them. And that went for Karma too. But for some reason, I don't remember any of Karma's other graphics. I just remember his cross,
I think he had a dog.
They re-released it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I always thought maybe it was more like because San Francisco had taken on Dogtown, like it was with Fausto and Keith and those guys. And that maybe that they were trying to separate it's not a Venice company anymore. Like Venice is the crosses and this is like our version.
Okay. Yeah. I think both are true.
It's interesting. Is there some inside joke? Because Ibiseta keeps telling me to ask you what they did with your first board.
Oh, I mean, apparently. So I don't know. You probably, you grew up in SF?
No, I grew up in the suburbs, like Redwood City, San Carlos.
Okay. All right. So
yeah.
When did you meet Jake?
Ooh, it's funny. I met him at Glory Hole and at Concrete when he worked at the shop.
Oh, okay. So you met him real early then.
Dude, but I met him as a total, like you were saying, just getting vibe. Like I was looking
I got vibe.
I was looking through shirts And he was like, who's going to put those shirts back? And I was like, wait, what? Like, just shit like
I
that.
don't remember a particular verbal, like, like epithet or anything, but I do remember just feeling like these guys don't like me when I went into Concrete Jungle, for the first time at like, I don't know, 13 or 14, right? Or something
scary.
like that. And feeling super vibed and probably looking to them like a kook, so, but anyway, so what happened was they took the cartoon graphic and this goes back to me going off Dogtown. If you want me to like essentially quit or like quitting.
So when you quit Dogtown, they did this?
Yes. So really what was going on the time for me was board royalty checks were slim, right? They were pretty thin at the time.
Yeah.
Dogtown was going through that transition, so they're selling less of that stuff. The way that I was getting by, because I moved from here right after I turned 18 to Daly City, and I lived in the same apartment with Red Dog.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So I lived in an apartment in Daly City with Red Dog at the period of time that this whole transition was happening. He had moved up here, right? The brand was going through its transition, and I was moving up there because my career was, as a pro was beginning. Living there, going in and out of high speed and getting vibed by Jake so that was like, even then, right? The warehouse, you get vibed in the warehouse, like when you go in there to get some decks. And I actually have something of an independent streak running in me too. So to the extent that Jake would do that to me, I kind of like my fight or flight instinct was like, well, whatever, like, well, screw you too, right? This kind of thing. And so back to the economic part of that, I had some family stuff going on, and the way that I was surviving and paying rent in that apartment was I was placing well in contests, and I was getting contest match, right? I was getting winnings, matchings from Thunder, Spitfire, and DTS. And then I was getting photo incentives, and I was getting the winnings themselves, which weren't huge, but it was enough to like get by. And it was me and Brooke actually at that time, right? And she was doing like a regular job, but it got to the point where, in addition, in conjunction with that, with the economic challenges and some stuff that was going on in my family, the opportunity to ride for New Deal came around, right? And I said, I don't know how long this is going to last, right? In general, I could hurt myself tomorrow and, like my career could be over. So I decided to take that opportunity, right? And sat in a room with Fausto Vitello by myself at 18, and how all these guys are,
Absolutely.
And this is interesting because I have a loyalty oriented interface to things too, but I was having a hard time and like kind of getting this all going and feeling like the commitment was there for me and, all that kind of stuff. And so in addition to some challenges, he was like trying to convince me, and I basically what it came down to was those challenges I was facing and the opportunity that was being presented. And so when I did that, I think kind of what happened in the background was that Jake already didn't like me. And then, I had just quit Dogtown, and with these guys who have a pure, very, masculine, loyalty oriented culture, their response to that was like, well, fuck you, And so, that's where Just a Goon came from, which was they took the board, and then I don't know if you could read it or not, but like in the flames of the firework, it said my name, and they just the firework was going down, and they changed it to say that. I don't, it didn't bother me then. It doesn't bother me now. It's perfectly fine. I mean, I'll just chalk it up to like, a Rocco Powell style,
right.
All coverage is good coverage. Controversy is controversy is good kind of thing. I'd love to get my hands. I think they took the boards and they did that. So I think they took the remaining boards and then they actually printed on them and sold them or something. I don't, get my hands on one because that's even more than my first pro model. I don't begrudge people. I understand where that kind of, attitude comes from. I completely understand it. It wasn't, I think, until I started doing Mad Circle and I began to advertise in Thrasher that things started to normalize.
Okay.
But that was a good experience for me because it actually took a lot of courage is the wrong word, but sitting in a room with a guy like that and
it's
sticking
intense.
to your guns about I got to move on,
Yeah.
That kind of gave me a fair amount of confidence after in experiences. For instance, after leaving skateboarding and working in corporate and all that kind of stuff, and just being able to say, no, I'm doing it like this. I understand if this is nothing against you, right? Right. I understand where you're coming from, but I kind of have to move on, or whatever it was. And I guess I have a little bit. I do. I mean, I remember when Moses, and everything is totally cool between us. This is so long ago, anyway, right? And he's involved in a project we're working on with Pontus and some other stuff. But when Moses quit, my feelings were so hurt. When he quit Mad Circle, I was like, bro, I put so much energy into this, and
your family too. It's like you lost a brother. You're like, wait, we're hanging out. It's more than just you're on the team. You're my bro.
Yeah, no, he was part of our family, and it was a surprise. That was the other aspect, and I think it probably came as a surprise to these guys too. And I think they're personally hurt by it, right? It's not necessarily that they're hurt, but they feel betrayed. I'm only bringing that up because it's a corollary for my experience as somebody running a company. And it happened to be Moses, right? And it was Tuss too, actually. So I understand, you feel as if you're putting an investment into somebody, right? You're making an investment in someone and you feel kind of personally betrayed when somebody does that. So I understand.
It's never easy. It's
never
easy. Yeah.
Everybody's been through it. I learned pretty early on, you're only the hot shit for a pretty short period of time, right?
3 years.
3 years. Yeah, you're only I learned this pretty early on. Man, I'm lucky enough to be doing this. I have to take advantage of the time that I have. And I had a decently long career. I mean, technically it went almost as long as Mad Circle. I hung it up slightly early because I felt like I'm putting too much time into the brand, and I should probably, I don't want to be accused of milking it, or something like that. And at the time, I mean, nowadays it's different. And I think that's good. I think it's good that you don't necessarily have to be risking your life or something to have a pro model. You can kind of just have one, and you can have one on the strength of your earlier career. And I think that's good because, people need it. And this is a lifelong career for a fair amount of people. So that's good. I think that's good.
Yeah, but you're a pioneer. You're like one of the guys that started in the era of when street skating started. So for you to have a legend board doesn't make sense then. Now it does.
It doesn't.
But we have to build this thing before we can have legends.
You're right. And there's an element of that where there was that period where the culture shifted, competition became a taboo, being competitive became a taboo.
Right.
People transitioned away from competition. Humility was this kind of aspect, of I'm my part sucks, or whatever, right? And being competitive with other people was frowned upon. And so that, was an aspect of it too. Also, that was just a practical move on my end because it's hard running a brand and staying relevant. It's because it was, really incredibly DIY at the time. And I had help. I had some backing, but Mad Circle was also its own corporation for the whole time. And that was done intentionally because it was a SF company. Right. And the backing wasn't in NorCal. We had our own kind of culture and thing, but that's that's a long-winded answer, but that was the story as it related to Dogtown. by and large. And I had to explain it because I had to explain why this board was happening.
I'm fascinated with this stuff, man. I love hearing all this stuff. This is when you're shining. You're putting out a couple video parts with like Danny Sargent and this like new thing, and this. It's kind of street skating's really taken off, and like you're a big part of that. What was that like? I mean, what are the early discussions like? Are you talking with Steve Douglas? Are you going down there? Like,
well, they had just, I got on like a few months after the promo video came out.
Okay.
So I had, like I said, I had talks with people, that I was for the bands that I was really interested in. And at that one contest that I'm at the AM finals that I mentioned, that was Shut, Concrete Jungle,
right.
Dogtown. There were some other ones, that were potentials for me, but it was my friendships with Danny, Rick, knowing Andy and other people that led to them reaching out to me, and saying, hey, do you want to be a part of this thing? And it, it was, New Deal for that 2 to 3 years of 1990 to 1993, 94 was at least up to 93, right? Was pretty much the hottest brand. I went from struggling economically to, especially at the time, for making good money for that period. And that did a lot for not only me and, my immediate kind of family and others in that specific period of time. But it also helped me kind of form views and a kind of baseline for what I did with my later career and what I did with Mad Circle. And it opened up a lot of opportunities for me. And I was also familiar with all these people because I spent so much time in OC as a Circle A guy. I already knew Ed. Me and Ed were on the same team with Circle A. Right. And we did some traveling together. So there was also that connection.
I didn't think of that.
With Circle A with Ed. It was, we're all just, and it had a new, there was a new concept going along with it. And I know that didn't pan out the way that it was originally imagined, but how it was originally imagined was that everyone that rode for the company would actually have a stake in the company. Right. And so that was partially pitched. And that's why, in part, it was called the New Deal. Obviously, there was the New Deal shop in the UK and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But another aspect of it was we want to be able to share in this thing with everyone else. And that came out of people being dissatisfied with Vision and Schmidt sticks. It evolved into a lot of us being able to have our own companies. So Underworld Element.
Yeah.
Right. And others. So that's really kind of how that transpired. And that was ultimately better. Yeah. So it really started with kind of, my relationships with Danny and Rick. And I had already talked to Danny at that period in time about Concrete Jungle and meaning previously. So
okay.
I actually honestly can't remember exactly who I think it was a call that I had with Andy facilitated by Danny and Rick. I think that's what it was.
Okay.
They wanted my style of skating, to round out, the styles on the team. Couldn't say no.
I mean, that's a great time to be alive. The Useless Wooden Toys video, is that kind of like when you get on, are they already talking about that? Like,
yeah, pretty much. And, it's interesting. It brings up an aspect of nowadays, there's positive and aspects to this, but back then it was just photos, right? Videos were really just then starting to become
just Santa Cruz or Powell were like the only videos back then.
Yeah, exactly. And so there were, my whole development skating in the 80s in Monterey County, which there's lots of spots, and there's some photos floating around out there. In fact, there's one.
Sean Martin.
Yeah, there's one of Sean. There's one of Sean when he and Tobin and some other people took a road trip down, and we went to a lot of spots in that area. There was a lot of really good skating going on, that just never got on video, right? The only kind of
not everybody
evidence
had
of-
video cameras.
Yes, exactly. And the only evidence of it is really just the photos that are still floating around out there.
Right.
They were talking about that. Obviously, everybody was already filming, and that the promo had already come out. So I didn't have an opportunity to be in that. But really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, like I was on at the very beginning. I think people think of it that way, right? When they think of the main pros on New Deal, including Douglas and those guys. That's another, back to what I was saying about kind of distinct and iconic graphic treatments for skateboard graphics. Obviously, Andy's style was very distinct, and I was lucky enough to have a few of those. You know, there's the Adventures board, the Pinball Wizard board. Those are the two main ones drawn by Andy, and you know, those have a specific kind of theme behind them that was actually tied to the experience I imparted to you about that I had on Dogtown. And then the whole fireworks thing literally just came out of a Cow Skates tour where we were just like a whole bunch of people. And it got to the point where we were, because in California, you can't just like go buy fireworks. Right? No. And so we're in like, you know, Kentucky and Ohio, you know, all these places. And so we're like, you know, but you know, and so we would spend like, you know, a couple $100, and you know, at one point we were letting off like a box full of them in like a parking lot, and then got bottle rockets, and there were two vans, and we were firing them at each other out the you know. This was in the spring, so it's still wet and muggy out there, and you know, launching them at each other from van to van and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's where that whole thing kind of came from.
Okay.
I don't know if that was the time. So I also knew Douglas and those guys, because Douglas was in SJ. And
with Bod.
There was with Bod.
Yeah.
And then there was the Santa Cruz warehouse.
Yeah.
Right.
The cannery.
Yes. And Hensley ramp, which was probably gone by that time. But I still had interfaces with all those guys. I was telling Ray how I have all these old photos of Rick Moody and Aaron Arno and Schroeder. It's something when you have that many, and also you're traveling the world doing it. And that was, you know, another great opportunity that came with New Deal. Not that I didn't have that beforehand, but it's such a distinct thing to be doing that you never really, I mean, I wrapped Mad Circle up in 1998, but you're never completely removed from it. Like, you know, when you have this deep of an interface to it, because you have so many friendships developed over that period of time. But you know, my first, I mean, that's up there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a cutout that Schmelzer gave me of the Lopes Monopoly board, the Circle A one. Yeah. My first trip to Europe was in 1989 with that dude and Bill Weiss.
With Joe Lopes?
Yeah. My first
way.
Yeah. That was my first trip. So, I mean, I know I'm getting kind of far afield here, but
no, it's fine.
It's
Bill Weiss said Joe Lopes. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I always forget Mike's last name, but Mike was a Circle A Vert Am, and he was with us. So me, Mike, Weiss, Lopes, and I think that was it. Not, you know, Ross. Ross was obviously the big Ross Goodman. The big. I don't think he ever turned pro for Circle A either. He didn't. He turned pro for Santa Cruz. But he was, you know, kind of the heavy vert hitter for Circle A at the time. Yeah, and that was a formative experience because Lopes was, you know, living full, put it that way.
Partying hard.
Yeah. And I was more reserved, you know, but I didn't have any trouble kind of just being there. You're seeing this continuing evolution, right? But I got to experience like the whole thing, you know, even like all of those kind of cultural periods, all the way back to, like I was saying, you know, the soft knee pad and the Hobie thing, you know, through the kind of, you know,
baggy pants cut off to
all the way to there,
calves.
through the punk rock, through the hip hop, through the whole thing. And that's, a real cultural migration, that skateboarding was doing, and street skating was obviously a big, big part of that, right? Because that's kind of, to a certain extent, where the punk rock came in, where the hip hop came in, and the merge. I guess Bad Brains is kind of your middle. I don't know. It's very few people get to have that kind of experience. So you're really lucky to have been able to do it.
You know who came up with the name Useless Wooden Toys?
I want to say it might have even been Brent or something, but Schmidt could tell you that.
I don't do tricks. I just roll.
I was involved creatively, and I came up with my own graphic concepts, right? And everybody did, for the most part. That was another promise. I really only got into creating my own graphics when I started through Paul Schmidt and Gorm Boberg, who I don't know if you know or not.
No.
But Gorm was Swedish street skating champ, and he was one of the illustrators for New Deal, and he wrote for New Deal. But I got into computing through those guys, and that's when I started doing graphics through computing. I didn't have the illustration skills, but the reason I'm bringing this up is that I was just really more focused on the skating. And so, for instance, Ansel and Red Dog and those guys came to me and said, kind of, what do you want? And I said, well, I kind of want a mafia, gangster, and I want this and that. And then they just kind of came up with that from there, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of the same thing with Andy, although that was a little more involved, right, with New Deal, where we created a story, right? Like there was a story there, and the story gravitated from one deck to another. And the concept actually got sort of a little more abstract, right, as it went on, but it was still the same basic one. But the characters were developed out of that. You'll see that through, like, especially with Andy's graphics. Obviously, Ed did his own stuff from the beginning, but mine have a real arc going from Andy to Barry, right? Going from Andy to Barry McGee with New Deal. Me, obviously, always articulating the concepts, and then the illustrator kind of coming up with their vision of that. Like I said, with Andy, the adventures board and the pimp ball and all that kind of stuff, those were a specific set of concepts. And so we worked on the characters together, and this is where Susie Switchblade came from. Susie Switchblade is Brooke, essentially, with a new, with a more vixen kind of concept wrapped around it. Yeah. Which Andy actually injected that part. So it's a collaborative process.
From New Deal to Mad Circle, going from Andy to Barry McGee, who's Twist, who at that time is not Twist now. Like he was blowing up as you guys were. It was just like the timing couldn't have been better.
Yeah, well, and it's this is also an example of, for instance, how EMB comes into play, because I actually started going down there to skate when I was still on Dogtown.
Okay.
And back to really sort of not feeling extra comfortable with a lot of the people. I always, Stacy Gibo was always super cool. Do you remember Stacy Gibo?
Yeah, I love Stacy.
He was in the warehouse. Yeah, Stacy was a bro, and he always felt really comfortable around him. But there was this kind of wall to break down at high speed, and that wall, it wasn't quite as stiff. It wasn't quite as structurally kind of rigid down at EMB, right? Like those guys they definitely had, a barrier, right? But that barrier, it just, I don't know. It was more kind of colloquial. It was more kind of like, you make your commitment down here and then you get to be part of the crew as long as you're not a T-Dog. That EMB is a cultural linchpin in the kind of merging of existing non-skate oriented street culture and street skating. And these two things obviously kind of merged because they were both happening on the street, right?
Yeah, like graffiti is going on. Yeah, so it's
exactly.
like, yeah, exactly. And I feel kind of like, I don't know, I kind of want to say slap came out of that too.
You're right. I think you're right. Slap was part of that. I mean, Lance was very much interfaced to that new school kind of thing that was happening.
It was very hip hop and street and graffiti kind of feel. Like it was very different than what it became. But it had that EMB. I remember like the dudes like Carol and a bunch of those dudes were at EMB one day and everyone had a slap shirt on. And I was like, what the fuck is slap? It just said slap. That was it. And no one knew what it was. And then all of a sudden the mag came out. And so that's interesting.
Yeah. And I think you're right in that magazine was developed to a certain extent to kind of knock that barrier down.
Sure.
Right. And Lance, I think, was put in charge of it also for that reason, because the guys that were getting covers there and getting the coverage there weren't necessarily associated with, at that time, the older school kind of group of people that Thrasher was characterized by.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, it goes all the way back to the guys that just kind of were more casual skateboarders at EMB that were just locals, right? You know, like Thorin and Jer and all of those guys who most people don't know, but are in the illustrations, you know, when you see an EMB crew breakdown. And, you know, that's a very organic, very natural cultural phenomenon that happened in SF, right? You know, as a function of both of these things being predominantly street oriented. Right. And that, you know, that's the slap is a good point. And interestingly, you know, I think that's one of the reasons it became the board that it is, the bulletin board, you know, the slap forum, because I don't know, there's just
my biggest mistake. A friend of mine said, park your ego at the door.
That's where it's your opportunity, like I said, to say, I don't, like you said, no regrets. Like I have a really hard time ever looking back on any of the decisions I made to say a regret is something really profound. You know, in my world, a regret is, I don't know, it's just the wrong word. For me, they're all experiences that I had, that I learned from. All the stuff that we've been talking, none of that I view as negative. And, you know, down all the way down to sitting in a room with Fausto or whatever. These are all things that I learned from. And, you know, definitely like no regrets on any of that.
Sure.
You know, even my exit, you know, which I made of my own volition because I wanted to go explore and do other things, and skating had just become, you know, was kind of moving in a direction that I didn't like. And I didn't have great relationships with the people I was partnered with at the time, which is totally different now. You could try and get out of it and it wouldn't happen. You could, you know what I mean? Like you could try and be like, I'm done with skateboarding, you know, and like I'm going off to do something completely different. To this day, people are still going to bring up people who did almost completely remove themselves from it. You know, like I still remember whatever, you know, Ray Meyer, like whomever, you know, who had separate careers and stuff like that. And, you know, they were in skateboarding still because they had lots of friends and, you know, relationships and all that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely no regrets. Same deal on my end.
Well, was the shop gone boarding? Was that during New Deal or?
That was during New Deal. Yeah. And that was, you know, those Brooke and Marilyn and Chrissy got together and wanted to start it. I told them to call it Blondies. I thought that would be, they were all blonde. But I thought that would have been a good name. Short-lived, I guess, for the most part, but it kind of developed its own scene down there in Lower Haight. There was FTC, and FTC was probably still like both a sports store and skateboarding at that time. It's interesting how that developed its own, you know, almost exclusively skate-oriented scene. Because, you know, it was a regular sports store on top of that, you know.
Yeah. How did you meet Barry?
So I don't know. We were encouraged to kind of develop our own graphic identity at New Deal. even though Andy's stuff was so distinct, and everybody was maybe, you know, encouraged to the extent that like, if you wanted to go off and develop that, then you were free to do it.
Right.
And I think Andy was just, he was trending into doing Underworld Element, right? And so there was room for that where I could like go out and explore. And so Gorm, who I mentioned earlier, Gorm Boberg, his IG handle's just Gorm __ Boberg.
Okay.
He had, and obviously lots of other people had introduced me to like graffiti. I never did it, but I used to go out with him like into the Anjuda tunnel because it was something to do, right? Wow. It was like something to go and experience, and being on the street, you want to be on it all the time, and you're seeing a sort of set of messages be conveyed through the graffiti, you know, and everything. And so I would go out with him, but that wasn't the exclusive experience. But the long story short, I just saw his stuff on the street.
Oh. Yeah.
So I saw his faces and the screws, and then the tags, which were all distinct and stood out, right?
Sure.
They were, I don't know, they just kind of had a little more depth and they were also, it's an interesting thing to say because they were usually one color, but they did have, right? They had this kind of additional depth to them and something that was different. There was this world of graffiti and skating and art that were merging. I met Mr. Element. I had seen Barry's stuff out on the street. And I said, you know, I wonder if this guy might want to do skateboard graphics, right? And so I just asked Mr. Element, I said, hey, do you know this guy? Like, who is this guy? And he said, oh, yeah, that's Barry, that's Twist. I said, well, you want to ask him if he wants to do skateboard graphics? And that's what he did. And then he facilitated a phone conversation. Like he said, oh, it was just exchange information. I called him on the phone. I said, well, here's what I'm looking at. Here's the kind of stuff that I want to do. I'll give you a concept and then you illustrate it. And he said, sure, because he was still in art school at the time.
Yeah.
And I think he probably, you know, extra money. They paid fair. I think it gave him an opportunity to do some, to go in a direction that both his schooling, which was printmaking, and his personal graffiti weren't going, right? And so, I mean, the stuff that he did for me was extremely, in most cases, really detailed, you know, pencil, pen, whiteout, and ink, you know, and then maybe, you know, colored pencil or another method of coloring it if he was actually coloring the art. But that's how I met him. He's actually, I don't know if most people don't know this, but he's in the beginning of Let the Horns Blow drawing. Because of my experience with Andy and because of my experience with Gorm, who were both skate artists, I always viewed these guys as you're kind of like part of the team. You know what I mean? Like when we bring you on and you're like the primary illustrator for what we're doing. Yeah. I see you as part of the team. And that's kind of what I'm building is, you know, whether it's, I also want a vert skater, even though it's out of fashion because I'm a complete skateboarder, you know? And I mean, I would also want like an AT vegan. That was kind of Moses, you know? So that's kind of how the team I was building. And I know we haven't brought it up. We're talking about Mad Circle, right? But I wanted an artist that was like also part of the team. And so, there's a little blip of him in the very beginning montage. But we actually hired him full time, and he was an employee of Mad Circle Incorporated. And he, for the first 2.5 years, roughly, right, did most of the primary illustrations. And then there were other like Gorm. I actually developed the brand more with Gorm than we developed the brand. And then a lot of those concepts would go to Barry. And that's, for instance, where like we're not looking at it right now, but there's the Mad King, right? That's kind of sticking his tongue out and he's like looking like this and he's got the tall crown and there's the concentric circles behind it. That's a combination of me illustrating me and Gorm coming up with the concept, illustrating it to Barry, and then, you know, his interpretation of what we were, you know, of what we were asking of them. And so the official seal came out of that. The Madball facing came out of that. And then a lot of obviously really detailed board graphics that he illustrated for everyone in the very beginning.
Okay.
We basically, the way that we worked was we bought him a fax machine. And I still have a bunch of these faxes, where we're like going back and forth, saying change this and change that. How does this look? That kind of thing. And then he was off also finishing up school and doing his graffiti.
What a fucking time. Nobody will ever understand that wasn't a part of that era, because it's like there was no phones that you could just take a photo of something and zap it to them.
No.
Like all the different things that we went through, like video editing. I was laughing. I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, we had to do tape to tape, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I know, that's how we did the Think video. Like there was footage coming in, but we couldn't put it earlier in the video because we already had half the video made,
Okay.
shit like
So
that.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess so. There was at that particular time, I think email was kind of becoming a thing, but it was all dial up, and you couldn't send a photo or anything.
Yeah, it was just so
Yeah.
foreign. At least
So you were
to
working
me.
with fish and
Yeah, that was my first job. That Greg, Phil Shao was my local. Redwood
okay.
City. We grew up together. So he was actually on Confusion with Joe Lopes.
Okay.
That was his first sponsor. But then Phil got sponsored by Think. And then I kind of was filming with him. So they hired me.
Okay.
I mean, all that stuff like, rendering and all these things. It just took so much time to like do nothing really. You saying the fax, the graphic back and forth is just, that's classic,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, and then, that process would then be me taking possession of the art, sending it down, in some cases, sending it down to Costa Mesa to get drum scanned or getting a drum scanned in SF, and then helping to work on it, whether or not it was being colored after the fact. And that's when, with Matt's, with New Deal, this was me just still skating primarily.
Yeah.
And it was still kind of, it was practical. There was enough,
well, you didn't know any better. Like it was all that you could do. So I was like,
yeah. But that, being involved in all of that is, partially how I felt comfortable starting Mad Circle from a skills standpoint. And then how I got involved in early internet, pre-press, print production, video production. Mad Circle was probably one of the few companies at the time that had a website. It was like relatively rudimentary, but I got into working on that stuff, working within those mediums through all of this because it was DIY early. Paul told me this the other day because I was down there looking through old stuff in his workshop, Schmidt, and he told me the name of this first digital video editing program, and now I can't remember it.
But it was before Media 100?
It was before. That's what Let the Horns Blow was done on. I think it was like something studio, and it wasn't even Adobe. It was like a third-party company that probably then got bought.
Yeah.
By Media 100 or by CGI or something like that ended up getting bought. But that's what Let the Horns Blow was edited with.
Okay.
And I literally received my education in those production mediums through those guys,
Okay.
Schmidt, Gorm, Andy, and then some other guys, that Friedberg was part of that too.
Like did you have a hand in 411?
To the extent that like I could contribute. So I was in the room when that decision was made. It was, for us, it was more like, well, now you're going to have access, right, to this medium of delivering, promotional materials for your brand and everything.
Yeah.
I was in that kind of pretty much came out at the same time. It might have been the same meeting where they, Andy and Paul and Steve said, if you were going to do a brand, like what would it be? And so this was after Underworld was either starting to form or had formed.
Yep.
And all these things were beginning to happen. And 411 was, I can picture it now, everybody, him and Douglas and Friedberg and everyone sitting in there going, we need a video magazine and this can work. And, we can make it happen on a monthly basis.
Life hammer right there.
Yeah. It was another one of these pillars of the development of more easily accessible, both media, and products, through the internet, through like Rocco moving production to China,
right.
And this kind of stuff. And then 411 making all of this stuff more accessible to people on a more rapid basis. And I guess what you could say is Instagram is essentially the next iteration of that. And it's positive and negative, right? Because in my view, there's there are positives and negatives, for instance, to barriers to entry to things. And when it's just mass exposure, all of that changes. And you, like I said, you get positives and you get negatives from that. And
sure.
It's with skateboarding, it's been this mass kind of growth in different genres of skating, and then people being able to sort of gain exposure without even a direct interface potentially to anyone in the industry.
Yeah.
Right.
The Instagram star is real.
Yeah.
This person has this many followers and they've never had a video part or a photo in a magazine, but they got sponsors.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so there's, like I said, there's good and good and bad aspects to it. The sort of X Games, major shoe brand inserting itself into the culture thing was something I didn't look on positively. I think it's been good economically for a lot of people. And I think that's a positive, right? I think it has a kind of generally bad influence on the culture because in my view, it's the organic growth right from the ground up that really characterizes why people become enamored with skateboarding and why you do it. And, your friendships and interfaces and all of that kind of stuff. To the extent that it's been good for people, that's a good thing because, you put all your energy into this and to be able to actually make a living off of it is positive.
Yeah. I'd see like when my friends make a lot of money, but I wonder because you were kind of a contest guy in the early stages. Would you think that if at that time the Olympics said we're going to have skateboarding for the first time, would you have gone to the Olympics?
So I have a different. I would have, and that's because I'm not sure that the same commercial stigma that's associated with it now would have been around at the time because it hadn't really developed. Right. Not that I would have made my decision based on what other people were thinking, but that is something that was going through your head. There was an element of Mad Circle that was aspirational from an athletics standpoint as it relates to your ability as a professional athlete to achieve something along the lines of what I was seeing in basketball and baseball and football and all these kinds of things. And some of the kind of, sports oriented stuff that came out of Mad Circle, like the apparel, the reason we did it, all the kind of one-off stuff that we did that was really custom and high end for team, right? All that kind of stuff. It came out of this view of my team and myself. I didn't view myself any different from a professional athletics standpoint. And there was a little bit of a chip on your shoulder about, well, we work just as hard as everyone else and we should have kind of the same, accoutrements of those things. And Scott was a big part of that too, right? Like, especially early on with Mad Circle, a lot of these stuff we did was like so expensive we didn't make any money on it because we were buying like really high-end blanks and that kind of thing. People might look at, say, something like Street League, and they might look at something like the Olympics, and they would call it mainstream. I'd call it commercial. That's not my preference. Right, for how I interface to skateboarding and what I prefer in terms of what I watch and that kind of thing. And obviously the skill level is incredibly high. Like there's no debating that. I think there's kind of an unfortunate sterility to the way that they assemble the course, right? And then you get this thing where guys are compelled to kind of just go back and forth. And so there's a missing element of that, where like the complete opposite of that is like Oceanside, or something. And like there's a burnt out car, and so people are forced to be creative with something that's like non-standard, right? Yep. And these are two aspects of skating. There's another aspect of it where I just have like a military background in my family and a lot of commitment on that level, where I would have said to myself, having an opportunity to represent my country in this way would have been huge for me. But this is where, to a certain extent, you see there's a period like some of the baseball oriented graphic treatments came out of this for Mad Circle. That was mostly chaos stuff, but then there was some other kind of general treatments that we did that way. Mm-hmm. I started using the word skateboarding in the same way that like you'd see a warm-up jersey, for like the Dallas Mavericks or something. Yeah. And it would say Dallas Mavericks basketball. And I did a lot of team issue stuff that was oriented around that, where it'd say Mad Circle Skateboarding, and it had a silhouette of me or Mike, right, of KO or something. And that's where fitted caps and like dope, right? Like kind of almost a lot. Some of it came from like warm-up gear or like, game gear, especially with basketball, because there's a street orientation there. There's a street orientation with skateboarding. And then there's the aspirational aspect that's pretty similar with guys that like, play basketball and make it big or whatever. There's a similar cultural, kind of component there.
Yes. So what year was it that Mad Circle started?
90. We started developing it in like early 92. Like the first ad was, I think, like October of 93.
I think there was something pivotal that happened either right as or right before that. It was a movie called City Hunter.
Oh, yeah. Is that, you got that from Zerosh? I want to say, no, maybe I was on No Deal. No, I can't remember, but yeah, that was me and actually the whole FTC crew. Javante was there. Yeah. This is a motley crew right here.
No, Jason Jessee told me that he roomed with you, I think.
Yeah, well, so he and I knew each other from Woodward. So we ended up, I'm sure I had seen him around prior to that, but we ended up rooming in Woodward. And that's how we knew each other. And that's how that happened, is that we went to Hong Kong for this film. And that was a crazy experience.
How did that all come about?
Well, actually that came about because Andy and Rick and I did some of my traveling with Ed, but it was normally, most of the time it was either me and Ed or it was me, Andy, and Rick. Okay. And so we did an Asia tour, and we did Hong Kong, and we met this guy named Walter, who, back then the distributorship in Hong Kong was facilitated by Walter, who was a kid who was interested in skateboarding, being affiliated with a guy who owned like a toy shop that had bikes and stuff like this in it, convinced him to start importing skateboards in Hong Kong. And we met him. And through the process of getting to know him on that tour, he reached out to us later and said, hey, do you think I'm going to start my own skate shop? Could you get me the New Deal distributorship rights? Okay. And so we facilitated that for him. And then we made two or more trips back as a function of that relationship developing. And one of them was this Golden Harvest film relationship that he had with the guys who made the Bruce Lee films and made the Jackie Chan films. And so they basically got us to go be evil skate hockey adversary for Jackie Chan in this movie.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that's where you get, a mishmash of people like Javante Turner and Jason Jessee going to Hong Kong to be in a movie.
And now, a first impression from our bro, Jason Lee Jessee.
Okay, so first time I met Justin Girard, I met him in Hong Kong. I'm almost positive. I don't think I've met him before that. We were eating hot dogs in Hong Kong. And our friend Jackie Chan, yeah. Rick Abasetta was there. It was cool. I like him a lot. He gave me a chicken shirt. Steve Keenan was like, you want to go to Hong Kong, Jackie Chan, be in a Jackie Chan movie? And I was like, okay. Flew over there. I think I flew alone maybe. And then met Warren and Tabo. But whatever, I met Justin right then, and for a Jackie Chan movie. It was Rick Avicetta, Justin, Andy Howell, Javante Turner, and that other weird guy. I don't even know his name. He was a trip, he was really angry. Everyone just kind of shrugged him off. Javante did 360 kickflips, really good. But Justin was so nice, like bosom buddies. Do you remember that show? He was not Tom Hanks, but the other guy. Super smart glasses, so cool. So nice. Roomed with him. They were doing graphics, him and Andy. Then we became friends. We hung out and I went to San Francisco and I think he was dating Brooke, gone boarding, right? She's the best. And now he lives down next to Brooke and Brooke's married to Zerosh. I left early from that trip. 2 weeks I could only handle. I got homesick. And then my friend called me in the middle of the night and asked me if they had hot dogs in Hong Kong. And I started crying. Hopefully Justin was asleep. He said he was asleep. But I think I woke him up. It's just, I wanted to come home so bad. It was so weird. But I lost weight, so that was good. Eating only rice. It was pretty gnarly. Like, I love it. I loved it, but I got real depressed. And then, because we broke his ankle. He went straight down this hill, bombed the hill first time, and then his handlers caught him, and he twisted his ankle on one of those dudes. And I shot my board out of his shin the first day. It was horrible. Horrible. 100 miles an hour bounced off his shin. And he went, oh! He jumped, and I was just like, how could this happen? What? I am not very professional at all. And then I left, and those guys had to stay there a little longer, and it was hell. That was a weird trip. I was 21 years old. Should I call Jackie Chan right now?
I actually brought Jason down to EMB before that, though.
Really?
Yeah, because he built me a lowrider bike, and we became friends. After during Woodward and after, he was pretty close by. When we heard about this thing that was going to happen, we were filling slots and everything too. And I said, "Well, hey, do you want to come?" He is a pretty. I mean, you know Jason?
Yeah, very well.
Okay, so he's quirky, and he thought, this will be fun. Like, we'll go down to Embarcadero, and
oh yeah,
and we'll street skate. And yeah, I mean, he was well received down there. But he's always half in an anxious space and half in a standard kind of space, and interfacing with people through jokes all the time. And
yeah, he operates on humor, but he has this anxiety-driven feel, a little, with almost a little hint of ADD.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, that's a recipe to get a Jason Jessee.
So what, I mean, this is probably a whole other podcast, but what's one of the best parts of that? I mean, give me a little bit about this movie situation.
Well, so I can tell you
got Javante, are you spending any time with Jackie Chan? What?
Yeah, well, I mean, Rick was the stunt double. Oh. There was, that's just a fact.
Shout out to Rick.
Shout out.
I remember when that whole thing happened. So we were there and they're like, well, who do we get that can actually skate, And they were like, you're perfect, So Golden Harvest is the film company that did the Bruce Lee films. At least in Hong Kong, they don't get permits for their locations. They do it guerrilla style.
Oh,
they do
wow.
it guerrilla style. They go, well, I don't know if they do now, but they didn't then.
Damn.
So,
and this is 90, early 90, right?
92, 93, 90, yeah, okay. 92, 93. And so what they do is they have this rapid deployment kind of approach to things. Hi, I have no idea who these people are. Just rolled up to my property. I live in the middle of nowhere. So the rapid deployment configuration consists of crazy drivers, really good, almost race quality drivers who have these souped up Mini Coopers. And what they do is there was a bus at one point, but this is how they get you from location to location. And these guys drive like maniacs. Rick can tell you a story about he and I being in the back of one of those cars without seatbelts, and this guy driving on a Hong Kong freeway like a friggin' NASCAR, you know.
Thought you were gonna die.
Yes, I was like, bro, like, you gotta stop. And he was just laughing at me the whole time, this guy, because he didn't speak English, right? And so I was telling him, you gotta, like, dude, I'm like, I can't take this, you know, because I'm like one of those guys that, now maybe not so much anymore, but if I'm gonna take a risk like that, like, I want to be in control of the risk, you know. And so that's the way they get you from location to location. They have the people with all of the equipment that come in as a separate unit. They deploy everything. They get you to your spot. They tell you what to do. They film it, and then they bail.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how it's literally like guerrilla style. We're just going to go. And then they know the timing and then in some cases, so it'd be like 5, 6 in the morning, right? Like right when the sun's coming up, they go and do this. And so there's that. So our role was, as, like I said, sort of like, well, it was like Jax used to do this kind of stuff, right? They do like a skate hockey kind of deal.
Yeah.
Didn't they do that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's where they got this from. Like they saw some photos online or something, or guys with like cut off jean jackets.
Yeah.
Like, so here's the, you know, you're an evil skate hockey gang. Right. And so we're literally in the background of a lot of these shots, playing skate hockey with cans, you know. And they gave us, this is another one, somebody's probably got one of these shirts, but they bootlegged Iron Maiden shirts of Eddie, in the tank, right? You know, the because a lot of the Iron Maiden stuff was like World War II themed, right?
Yeah.
So Eddie in the tank, like sticking his, you know, he's out and he's got like the, you know, the helmet with the flaps hanging down, and it's shooting, and there's bullet holes, you know, in the shirt. And
Wow.
It says, "Shoot that fucker." That's what it said on the shirt. Shoot that fucker. That's what it said. FOKKER. And that's what we were all wearing as our like skate gang apparel, you know? And then, I mean, it got kind of brutal actually, because you don't really have time to orient yourself to their schedule. And then also you would spend, like, there's a scene where they had Rick do stunt doubles where he's wearing like the suspenders and the red shirt, I think is what it was. And they put him on, what do they call that? The rig with the wire rig.
Oh, like a harness?
Yeah, but there's another name for it, but they put him in a harness, and he was doing like flips over this car, and that's in the film.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we were out sitting there in a bus, like in like 110, 115 degree heat or something.
Holy shit.
Roasting to death. Yeah. So that's the other thing, because they do a guerrilla style. It's not like being a part of SAG or something. You know what I mean? Like there's no rules. They just like go for it.
There's no right or wrong. It's skateboarding.
So was it a pretty rad experience? Like, were you stoked in the moment, or were you like, oh
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was stoked in the moment.
You're seeing probably like higher end filming and stuff than you're used to. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, well,
production.
I don't think it was digital. I mean, it would have been film at the time.
Uh-huh.
And we were, you know, trending into that like kind of world as skateboarders at that period of time. I have a picture in my head of one, you know, where we were shooting, we're supposed to bomb a hill, you know, or something. And they pulled all the stuff out, and then we had to leave really quickly because the location was getting busted essentially. So they had to do something else.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah. But it's, you know, Zarosh managed to find us. Like there's a scene where we're chasing Jackie Chan. And that's, I guess, the last anecdote. There was like this, like parking garage style walkway that went down like this, you know, but it was rectangular, square instead of round.
Okay.
And he tried to skate for some reason. I'm not exactly. I guess he had this reputation to do his own stunts, right, and all that kind of stuff. So he he tried to skate and he ended up spraining his ankle because he jumped off and he got going too fast. We were literally chasing him, like, 'cause they needed a shot. They needed a shot of him,
Right.
on the skateboard. It wasn't going to be good enough to have Rick because it was a close-up shot. And it's probably in the film. I haven't watched it recently, but he's going down and this ramp and he jumped off and just probably didn't have the timing right. And so he landed and tweaked his ankle, and then was out for a little while, but he was actually he had like an air cast that they would paint like his clothes so that he could still do some of the stuff. Yeah.
Dude.
So yeah, that was it. But Wally still has, it's BFD, I think, is the name of his shop, but he's the big, he's the major distributor out there and still has a shop, and he's got an IG account and he does a lot of stuff, building the skate scene there. He's half English. So that's another reason he could speak, Hong Kong was in English territory for a long period of time. So
yeah. Did that movie come out like in America, like a normal?
No, you have to order, but you can order it. It's all over eBay and stuff. You can.
Okay. So did you guys get paid? Like, was it like a good chunk?
We got like a little bit. We got like a little bit of money. We got like a little. Everybody got a little bit of money for that.
It was no Tony Hawk video game.
No. The story goes that Javante came back with a bunch of Momo gear for his Datsun 510.
How many did he have?
How many what? Steering wheels?
No, Datsun 510s. I remember every time I saw him, he was in a different one.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, which chop shop you were looking at.
So fucking rad.
Those and bikes, right? Yeah.
We gotta, I know I've taken a lot of your time and I appreciate it, but we gotta, Mad Circle is the big hurrah. Like, you're at Underworld Element. Are you working on it? Kind of like doing one foot in each
so
door.
I mean, I honestly think it might have been at the same meeting. It was like 411, and we were all discussing. Me, Paul, Douglas, Friedberg, Andy, Rick, Gorm, all these people, and we were discussing that. And then, Underworld Element was either in its production phase, right? Its development phase, or it had already launched, and those guys were like, hey. The rumbling started happening of, well, here's who we can, split off right into separate brands. And I think also at that point, it might have been that Ed left. And I think you could ask Ed this, but I think there's the potential that part of the reason he split off on his own was that they were more resistant to that initially, that they were more resistant to the pro splitting off to do his own brand initially. And so he and Mike got together and did their thing. Right. But yeah, so it was Underworld Element. And then they just said to me, hey, if you're going to do a brand, what would it look like? And I already had the name picked out, and a lot of the concepts and kind of graphic direction that I wanted to go with. I knew Gorm would be an excellent resource for me. The sideways Madball, he did that one.
Okay.
The one that always was accompanied with the streaks and everything. He did all the black line, the thick black line stuff. And then I worked with a lot of different artists, but he helped me develop the identity of the brand in the beginning. I figured for me, this was the next iteration in, my creative and professional and personal development. It's what I wanted to do. And I had a really solid idea of what the brand would look like. So, they helped. I put in some of my own money. Paul and Steve and Andy, who was an owner of Giant, also, they helped get some additional funds together to launch it. And Gorm and I started working on it. And it was during that period of time that, I obviously was telling Barry, we're going to launch this thing. And this, some of the concepts, the identity oriented concepts, emotional oriented concepts that were a staple of my graphics and also Mad Circle's approach to things, started with Barry and I working together around those graphics, and obviously Gorm and I, but Barry and I working on the New Deal stuff.
Okay. So did how long, like Mad Circle, the name, you had already come up with that name?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was some kind of, subconscious aspect of hip hop that I was listening to. There was a band that had that name in it, but to me, number one, we already talked about this, loyalty. I wanted to build a team that was like really tight knit and people that were really loyal to each other. And that's one concept, was we are kind of like the Mad Circle. Like we're fiercely loyal to each other and independent, and we're going to develop our own thing. And that part of the reason Mad Circle was its own company and wasn't like, Element was just kind of part of Giant in terms of its corporate structure.
Yeah.
Also, Mad Circle was very SF oriented, right? And it was, other than, I can't remember if Western Edition was around at that in 93 or not.
I don't think so.
But it was like kind of the only independent company for a while that was outside of Deluxe and High Speed and all that kind of thing. And so I'm sorry, but there was a specific aspect to your question.
Well, I'm just wondering, like trying to put all the pieces together, like when they come to you and they're like, hey, what would a team look like, right? You're like, I already got the name. I'm guessing that they knew that you were the type of guy that maybe had a little plan already.
Yeah. And I thought the other,
you're like, this guy can draw the logo. Like,
and I had already been working with Barry, so there was that relationship. I'd already been working with Gorm on developing some things, and so there was that relationship. And the other aspect of the idea around the brand was just the kind of direction things were heading, like globally, and just the world going mad, Mad Circle.
Okay.
And then there were graphic treatments to that end and everything. And so I did have the name ready. I had the basic, the kind of general, artistic and creative direction ready. And, once we got the go ahead, it was me and Gorm. I actually went down to Costa Mesa, and Gorm was living in Huntington Beach at the time, and come from Sweden, right? He was over here from Sweden, and he and I were just at Giant. I don't even know if was it Giant at the time. It might not even, I think it was actually. I think it had transitioned into Giant, but we were there working on it, or we were in his apartment working on it, staying up late, watching Ren and Stimpy cartoons. And
what were like the team element? Like, did you have like, we need this guy, or I want to get this guy? Like, were you thinking about that yet, or are you?
Yeah. We'd already kind of earmarked people, and most people don't. I knew I wanted Mike. There were other people that we would have liked to get on early in that period of time. And by that Mike, I mean Mike Kao.
Was he first?
It was probably actually Fissel who was first, because he and I were, I got him on New Deal because we were friends, and I can't remember who he was writing for previous to that.
Yeah.
But, Fissel, Kao, and then most people don't know this, but I have there were the portrait illustrations that Barry did of everyone. Some of those went on to the Let the Horns Blow video cover, but we used them in the very first ad. So it was me, Mike, and Fissel, but it was Jordan Richter was supposed to be.
Really?
He was supposed to be the Vert Pro. And he skated everything. He was ATV, and a lot of these high 8 tapes demonstrate that I've been looking through. But he, for my interface to him, like I thought of him as more of a vert skater because that's what he was doing primarily, right, for the period of time that I knew him. And some stuff happened there, but there's the first I still have an illustration of him. So that would have been the fourth one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that would have been the fourth one. And he would have completed, from my view, the team. And that's why, look, this is a guy, that's a like highly skilled, really, also like unique approach to his skating, all-terrain vehicle / vert pro, that like in my mind was rounding out the skill set, on the actual team of skateboarders. Chris's early stuff is really amazing as well, as everyone else's, but his, he had the whole, there's some pretty classic stuff. There's, what an ichthys is?
What?
It's the fish. It's the Jesus Christ fish.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He was a born again Christian. And so he had this dual tone board with the ichthys. That's what it's called, which I think I'm pronouncing it correctly.
It's like IXOYE or
thistle,
something.
Yeah. But it said thistle. He had a Noah's Ark, really, really detailed illustration. That Barry drew both. He drew both. And he had wheels called Holy Rollers.
Oh, he was okay.
Yeah, and he had wheels at one point called Saints because that, right? And we did adopted the, like, you remember that old TV show, The Saint? We adopted that. Oh, there was a show called The Saint from, I think it's, but it's a spy, and we adopted that graphic treatment for the wheel and everything. So each guy, there's a lot of thought put into everything with Mad Circle. Most everything was like original concept that was illustrated, right, or graphically developed. Kind of rare for most things were training graphic, in that period of time. But yeah, those were the first 4 guys, and obviously it trended into a lot of different people. Ed DeVera, Moses Ikonen, Scott Johnston. I mean, and the AM team originally, was Marcus McBride, Spencer Fujimoto.
Oh yeah.
Marcus
Carl
Brown
was on there, right? Carl and Rob Wells.
Carl actually came later. So Carl was obviously a part of the crew, but Carl came in the mid 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, Carl was on the team with Rob and Scott and
Cairo, right? Cairo
and Julio, yeah, and then
Cairo, and Bobby,
and Cairo at the very end. So in the middle era, Bobby, Carl, Scott, Rob, and then at the very end, Cairo's first pro model was a Mad Circle board.
I want to say Rob too, maybe. Didn't Rob's board come out right as you guys went?
Yeah.
Because I always give him shit like, Rob, you killed Mad Circle.
Because nothing killed it. I had developed this set of skills that I wanted to apply in different kind of disciplinary mediums. And being in SF was difficult with my partnership being in Costa Mesa. I didn't want to move down there. I wanted to stay in SF. Mad Circle had an SF identity. Most of its people came out of that culture and that scene. And I was just it was more difficult for me to get production done and everything from there. I didn't have the direct interface, and the relationships started to erode and that kind of thing. But on top of that, skateboarding was Mad Circle did really well its entire lifetime. People love the brand, and I think it's kind of a cult brand in skateboarding now because of the fact that I wrapped it up early in its right, not early, but well before, right?
Yeah.
It could have extended its life cycle much further. It just managing those personalities, managing their expectations, that was weighing on me a lot. I was doing most of the work. It was getting more and more difficult because my partnership was, in another part of California. The other aspect of that is just I was seeing the way some of the kind of main, commercial injections were going with skateboarding. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go, I'm going to go do something else now, because I'm going to take these skills that I've developed and advance my personal career outside of this specific medium, take that creative and kind of practical energy and put in some different things. So that's the reason. There were no, they wanted me to move down there, and I just decided, I'll go off and do something else.
Was it a hard decision, or was it kind of like?
Yeah, it was. And I, also, I mean, there were some elements of that period of time where there were some people working against me, not my partners, but there were some people working against me in that conglomerate, of Giant, and we were receiving priority, and it made it more difficult. Gorm, Jesse McMillan, obviously very early on, but Jesse McMillan at that point in time, and then other artists. That's another thing that gets to be difficult when you're managing all these different people, and there's a lot of logistical ins and outs. So that was becoming difficult. But so it was, and then Blayback, and so Blayback was the photographer starting pretty early on,
right?
94, around that period of time, and so it got just to kind of be too much for one guy. And even I think even now, there's kind of there's a much broader market, but there's still a relatively small group of companies and pros that rake in all the benefit from that. And I had always, you can ask everybody, and this is a little tidbit, but when I started Mad Circle, we went out of our way to give everyone health insurance. This is something, as far as I know, the only company that did it other than us was Powell. I think that was the only company that did it. So we made them, they were independent contractors, but they also were employees, and they had like a little small salary.
That's huge.
Yeah, that went along with their royalties and everything. And that's to illustrate that my approach to doing this was always to put my energy back in the company. And so I gained a lot of experience, a lot of relationships, a lot of friendships, a lot of, skills out of the experience of Mad Circle, but I never paid myself a lot of money or anything like this. The money always went back into the team, back into the company, back into tours, back into videos, back into, I made enough to live and everything. But that was my philosophy, was that if I put, this back in, I'll benefit from it eventually anyway. And so, again, it's important to point out, like, there was nothing, people weren't like, we were successful economically throughout the whole tenure, of Mad Circle. It always did well, but there were other differences, including like creative, and, at the end, we were actually being pushed, like cartoon stuff came back and was big with World Industries and some other companies. And so I'm sure a lot of other companies were like pushing their brands to go in that direction, because you were getting this new kind of shift again into a new generation of kids and all that kind of thing. I didn't really like that. And so that was another thing. I wanted to, take my company in the direction I wanted it to go. And so that was another aspect of it, but it was mutual, and, we dissolved it. Me and Paul and Steve dissolved it because we were the ownership. We're doing some stuff. I did a reissue exclusively for Japan in 2019 with Deal Skating, and I'm doing some stuff with Pontus that'll be hopefully this year. Pontus never turned pro for Mad Circle, but it was his first sponsor and his only, his primary AM sponsor before he went kind of back focusing exclusively on Europe.
Whatever you go to do next, I mean, watching Blayback's career, for example, like what he's done with photography it's incredible. Like I mean, all that stuff he did with Danny Way and DC and everything. He's such a great photographer. And just seeing Rob and getting into like the Lakai and getting into the, he'll take that Caballero back nose blunt forever.
But everyone is Carl has like really, trended in the direction that he, from a sort of personality standpoint and from a professional standpoint, that, he injected into the creative process. At that period in time when he was writing for Mad Circle, Moses obviously is kind of, the kind of a primary cog in Canadian skateboarding. Rob obviously has gone on to success in, on his focuses. Blayback, huge career in skating.
And twist, obviously.
And Cairo is still like everybody has a Scott went on and to be a shoe designer and is at Adidas now, and he used to come around too and really kind of soak up as much as he could, right, while I'm sitting in front of the computer doing the stuff and ask questions, and all these guys were gonna take their opportunities wherever they came, right? But Mad Circle was obviously a big formative piece for all of these people.
So do you, when these people are evolving, their careers are blossoming, are you feeling a sense of pride? Are you feeling sadness?
Yeah.
Like, what are feelings?
Oh, of course.
Like,
I mean,
post,
I don't, again, like you said, you don't, what was the phrase you used?
No regrets.
Oh no, is the other one that you don't take ownership of somebody else's success.
Oh no, that's you never say that you made someone.
Oh yeah, because you don't, and I mean, like there's an element of development for each person that has a big component in what Mad Circle was and what it did, but it's sort of like with nobody in particular like made me as like a software architect. When I got into software, I was in I was working at a company where there were a group of like Stanford, computer science grad people. And because I had a creative background, but took an interest in what they were doing, they were just feeding me, information. And the same kind of dynamic played out with Mad Circle. It feels good to, have been able to play a role in their future and further development. And to a certain extent, as it related to skateboarding, that was like Paul Schmidt, for me. And Gorm from, some other technical aspects, and Andy too, because art is just a part of the culture, and when you're surrounded by these guys who are just immensely creative all the time, it just bleeds off on you. And, that's kind of a carry forward with Mad Circle for a lot of these guys, I think. And they look back on it, they all look back on it as universally positive. Even though some of them, I'm sure, were surprised when they heard what was going on, it was pretty much 1999 actually when that all happened.
Okay.
But, and Bobby is out doing, his curation, right? He's like bringing the history of skateboarding and its very unique cultural accoutrements and quirks into this kind of it's similar to what he does with his skating, right?
Yeah,
he kind of curated spots as a skateboarder, and he curates the history as a kind of aficionado, and a knowledgeable and really super interested person. We actually he was out here recently, and I was actually behind the camera for his Oceanside project that he released into YouTube and everything. So when we were down there at Paul's, he and I were down there at his workshop and visiting people for this project we're working on. We did some extra stuff like that, filming spots and him doing his, history curation stuff.
Yeah, I want to try to get with Bobby. It'd be amazing. I love how his mind is amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean that's gonna be like, what are we at now? We're at 3. You're gonna be at 10 hours.
Yeah,
you're gonna be at like 10 hours. You're gonna have several different sessions with Bobby, and that's only one aspect, because heaven forbid, you get into the numerology or anything like that. Yeah. Then you're really gonna go down the rabbit hole.
Man, that's crazy. Those number things. I'm like, wow. Yeah. Real quick, you got into software programming?
Yeah. I mean, initially I thought I figured I would get into advertising because I had done all of that for Mad Circle, right? So that was another aspect of what I had done. I had really kind of developed my personal kind of approach and, to copy and to branding and everything through Mad Circle. And I thought I'd do that, but I ended up at a company in Redwood City called the At Home Network, which had purchased Excite, which was a search engine and kind of
That's where I was born, Redwood City.
Okay, yeah. So I and a portal, an internet portal, as they referred to it, at the time, and I ended up doing creative development and animation for what was this product never ended up being released, but it was an early kind of commercial experience on us that was flashed to memory on a set-top box. So a set-top box is like your cable box, right? And so we were developing commercial, purchasing interfaces, food delivery, advertising, movie reviews, trailers through this kind of portal experience. And through that, I was exposed to software development. After about 6 months or 7 months at that place, I ended up on the engineering side doing software development. And from there, I actually bounced back and forth. I moved to New York City for about 8 years. That's where my Italian family are from. The name is actually Girardi.
Okay.
Ended up working for a bunch of agencies doing kind of mix of creative and software development. From there, got into digital video. I worked at Thomson Reuters. I don't know, you know that company? Thomson Reuters is kind of a global information curation and acquisition company to a certain extent. And they also do news and they do finance. And so I got a job with that place right in Times Square. And that was in finance. That was developing a trading platform.
Damn.
So
this is all without education, really.
Yeah,
right?
but I got, it's sort of very similar to what, me kind of being the lead sort of, technical and creative person for Mad Circle by really just being incredibly interested in all this stuff, right? And it was the same thing. And that's why I said the Redwood City experience was a big one, because those guys that I refer to, those computer science guys, because I was bridging that gap, between creative and development and engineering, they just like took every opportunity they could. Yeah, they took every opportunity they could to teach me. And obviously I would ask questions because I needed to, because it was part of my job at that point. From there, I started working at this place called Akamai Technologies, which is the world's largest CDN. About 5% of internet traffic goes across their distributed network of servers. I developed a product there called the Akamai Media Player over the course of 10 years. And that, won some awards and stuff like that. And then
cool.
Still making them a lot of money, and then moved from there into just developing my own stuff, because I didn't want to go into management. I like doing things.
Yeah.
I like building things. I like creating things. I did the management thing with the team of skateboarders, and I can lead an engineering project, but I still want to be able to get my hands dirty and build things. It's just kind of how I operate.
Well, that was my next question, is kind of like going from running your own thing to working for someone else. That would be hard to have to take, I'm going to do it this way. And the guy's like, no, you're not. I'm the boss. You're doing it this way.
The thing is, it works that way more in software now, in tech. It works that way more now, but you got to remember, this was starting in 1998, 99.
So everyone was kind of just learning on the fly.
It was more informal, and it was more focused exclusively on, creating new concepts and trying to focus on innovation. And there was autonomy. So you had autonomy then. You would have less autonomy now in tech. There's actually a need to allow people to have autonomy when you're focusing on innovation and you're focusing on, creating new products. Sorry, that's my 6-month-old. I don't know. Or sorry, my 6-week-old. Yeah. You have kids?
No, we just got married a year ago. Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a boy. I have 2 boys. I have a 5-year-old and a 6-week-old.
Okay.
So so I don't know if you could hear that.
Well, that's the alarm, I guess.
Yeah, that's the alarm. So long story short, the fact that there was more autonomy made it an easier transition.
Okay.
But I did have a couple jobs in that period of time that allowed me to make it a little more smoothly. And in addition, tech, I mean, you know, it's still like somewhat freeform, but back then there was a lot of room.
Are you a big coffee guy then?
Oh yeah. There's no comparison or no parallel between just focus. You know, like you can't replace focus with coffee. But yeah, that's what I've been drinking this whole time. And yeah, down here it's Acme in Seaside.
Oh, okay.
That's the coffee roaster down here. Yeah.
Somebody said something about coffee.
I got this thing here.
Oh wow, you got nice. You got the black and white one. Yeah, I have the original art.
Really?
Yeah, I have like Barry took some. Sometimes when he would take something back, it'd generally be if he had hand colored it himself. You know, so I don't have the Rumblefish one, which is the two guys with one has a baseball bat with a nail in it. It's like a fight.
Oh, okay.
You know, which is actually inspired by an experience that me and Tobin Yellen had on 3rd and Palou.
Ooh, Pancho Muller got pocket checked right there.
Okay, yeah, we'll ask Tobin about it sometime. We don't have the time to go over it, but
yeah, okay.
That was a formative experience because I just moved to SF. That graphic is kind of, you know, inspired by my environment, you know, on Grove and Divisadero and like essentially at the top of Hayes Valley, you know.
Okay.
Or what are you going to do with that?
Actually, so my wife's brother, he had this board.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I sent a photo to Rob Welsh and I was like, hey, is this Justin's board? And he's like, yeah, I think so.
You know, he did tell me
and he hit you up, and then I thought you might need it.
I'd be happy to take it because you know what?
Yeah.
I have most of my stuff. However, in one case, I had two. I lent one to the Beautiful Loser show, and I never got it back. And then one was stolen in a move between Portland and Camas, Washington. Yeah, I'd be stoked to have it, man. If anyone's out there that has one that's like mint, you know, let me know because I need that. I need to get it for my kids, you know?
Well, no, this is for you. And it's a shout out to Matt Camisa. That's my wife's brother.
Shout out.
Who had a skateboard his whole, like this was his.
Just sitting in there.
Yeah. And he took the trucks and wheels off and he gave it to her to give to me. I'm going to use it as a ticket to get a few Smith grinds on your mini ramp.
Oh, for sure. Anytime. Yeah, you can come anytime. You can come with you know, like on your way down, you can pick up Ray Stevens and Meeks Geeks in Soquel.
Oh yeah.
Go to Buena Vista. Have a session there because the Meeks Geeks guys live next to Buena Vista. And then
are they the ones with the vert ramp?
I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure about that.
Okay.
Pick up Zerosh and take that motley crew of characters over to the mini ramp, and we'll have a session.
As soon as the weather permits, it'll happen.
Yeah.
We always end the podcast with a song.
Okay.
So if you want to look at your playlist, or if you have something in mind that maybe you want to drop as like a song for the finale, and while you're thinking of that, I got one last question for you.
Okay.
Who had the best stale to tail of all time?
Oh my goodness. I don't know because I feel like that was not very common. I think this would be Vert. I don't know. Maybe Ross Goodman or something like.
I feel like AP had one maybe, right? Alan Peterson?
Oh yeah, you're probably right about that.
But Ross Goodman but you did them everywhere.
Yeah. It's going to be somebody who could shake the deck. I don't know. Did Schroeder do him? Because he, you know, Goodman, Ross, he also had the best body jar I think pretty much in the business. They were always like, you know, 5 feet and then wham, and the whole thing with like shake a little bit. He doesn't get the credit. Ross, you know, he was absolutely one of my favorites and a teammate. On my playlist, it's a hard one. There's so much to choose from, but it's got to be something formative from my like period growing up. And I don't know, out of my neck of the woods, I'd have to say maybe something as deep as surf punks. Surf punks, formative era, main source. Mad Circle era. My Beach or Live at the Barbecue. How about that? Live at the Barbecue would be a good one. And that Live at the Barbecue is straight out of Let the Horns Blow, the Am Mix song.
Fuck yeah. Well, dude, thank you so fucking much.
Oh,
this has been a pleasure, man, for real.
Yeah, me too.
I love doing all of them, but this one,
thanks.
I'm hyped. It's super cool to hear all your stories and for you to share that with me and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for having me, dude.
Did you see the China Banks video I made?
I did see that one. Yeah, I did see that one.
Was that Julian that filmed you?
Oh, that was Schubert.
Schubert filmed that?
Yeah.
Okay, because it sounds like Julian. I thought everyone was asking me that.
Yeah, it was Schubert.
Oh, wow. Rest in peace.
Well, wait. No, sorry. I just misspoke. It was Jake Rosenberg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was Jake Rosenberg. Just giving myself the caveat. I'm almost 100% sure it was Jake, but it could have been Schubert. But yeah, like I didn't get to the two-tail there. So I guess I need to make a goal. I need to make getting seeing everything that's being done on those banks now. That'll be a goal to get the stale to tail instead of just the.
Oh, all right. I'll be waiting.
All right. I'll send the footage to you whenever.
Well, take care. And tonight, game 1.
Oh.
Hashtag Lakers suck. That's our hashtag.
Right on.
Well, take care of yourself, man. Good to talk.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, later.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Talkin Schmit. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. When you subscribe, you'll get notifications every Tuesday of new episodes the minute they become available. Also, please leave reviews and a 5-star rating. It's the best way to help the show grow. All of the episodes will always remain free, but if you would like to help support the show, you can do so at talkinschmit.com, where you can pick up some merchandise like t-shirts, beanies, hats, and stickers. The website has an entire archive of all of the episodes, with extra photos and videos. Email us with any suggestions, comments, or ways that the show may have improved your life at talkinschmit@gmail.com. All interviews are conducted, edited, and produced by Schmitty. The intro music is Mary's Cross by the band Nature. A very special shout out goes to the executive director, Sharal Camisa.
Shout out.
Love it! This is Talkin Schmit, where the Rolodex is deep, but the conversation is deeper.
Keep the wheels greased.